Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, CFIUS, reviews acquisitions by foreign companies to ensure that they don't threaten our national security. And the Director of National Intelligence investigates the national security risks proposed by proposed foreign investment transactions. So, Director Coates, your threat assessment observed that China and others are using legal ways to acquire American early-stage technologies, and that these foreign acquisitions erode our competitive advantage. So I'd like to explore that just a little bit. General Ashley, as head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, you look at foreign acquisitions of U.S. technology through the lens of national security risks to the supply chain for our government and our military. So I want to pick up on this where Senator McCaskill left off. Given that China and others will continue efforts to acquire our technologies, how well are we identifying emerging technologies that are critical to maintaining our military advantage over our adversaries, both in the near future and beyond?
So what I can speak to are the technologies that are coming out and what we do to go through the supply chain risk management, counterintelligence, how we examine those that are tied into the department.
If I can, General, let me just narrow the question up. The question I'm asking is, are we doing a good job of identifying all of the critical technologies that are subject to the Chinese? That's the first part. You've got to know that it's within your lens to take a look at.
Yeah, I can't speak to the totality of everything that's out there that would be examined. But when you talk about how they acquire it, some of it's legal, some of it is illegal, and some of it is that are starting to build their own technology now.
I understand that. I'm a little concerned, though, about our ability to monitor this in advance. I'm very concerned. Let me ask this, General Ashley. Do you believe that government investment in basic scientific research is critical to developing those technologies that maintain our military advantage?
I do.
Good. You know, I think it's important for us to be proactive in identifying emerging technologies that foreign adversaries will try to poach, and to continue investing in the research that strengthens our economy and our national security. So that's the point I'd like to underline today. I also have another question I want to ask. I want to pick up where Senator Heinrich left off. One of the tools we have to hold Russia accountable is sanctions. Congress overwhelmingly passed a law last year requiring sanctions on anyone that engages in cyber attacks on behalf of the Russians. The Trump administration has not imposed these required sanctions, even though Russia will continue trying to interfere in our elections. So last week, I asked the NSA director what message it sends to Vladimir Putin when the Trump administration does not implement mandatory sanctions to counter Russian cyber attacks. Admiral Rogers said, and I will quote him, "I believe that President Putin has clearly come to the conclusion that there's little price to pay here and that, therefore, I can continue this activity." And he concluded by saying, quote, "Clearly, what we've done hasn't been enough." Director Coates, do you agree with Admiral Rogers?
I do believe what we've done has not done enough. Sanctions are under consideration, and the Secretary of Treasury has indicated, I think as early as next week, he may be listing some of those sanctions. But clearly, we have not successfully countered in an offensive way, rather than defensive way, how to deal with some of the cyber attacks.
So you agree that we have not done enough. How about Admiral Rogers' statement when he says, "I believe that President Putin has clearly come to the conclusion that there's little price to pay here," meaning for Russian cyber attacks, and that he can therefore continue this activity? Do you agree with the Admiral on that?
I think they have seen some successes. I don't know to what extent they believe that the success they wanted to achieve I do support what has been discussed relative to the transparency and informing the American people. And our job as intelligence communities to inform the American people of this so that they take exercise better judgment in terms of what is real news and fake news.
You think our job is only to inform the American people? I think our job is
I didn't say it was the only thing. I did not
countermeasures.
say that's our only job. I said that's one of the things that we do.
It's
as an
one of the
intelligence
things we
community.
do.
That's correct.
So did you agree with Admiral Rogers' statement or not? I didn't hear whether there was a yes or no in there.
I said I do agree that there is more that we can do, and it's under consideration.
So, I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. As Americans, we should all be appalled that Vladimir Putin thinks he gets to play a role in the outcome of our elections.
I couldn't agree more.
Good. We need to prevent that from ever happening again.
And that's why transparency is really part of the effort.
Well, I'm all for transparency, but if the Trump administration doesn't implement sanctions as required by Congress, then we are not using every tool we can to effectively deter Russia from undermining our democracy.
And as I said, Secretary Mnuchin is going to be announcing those, I believe, within a week.
Eventually. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.